This is Your Other Brothers Podcast.
It's like running through an open door. It's like finding what you're looking for. We've been waiting. We won't wait no more. We got a beautiful story. Every moment on and on. We got a beautiful story. And we've only just begun. The best is yet to come.
Welcome home, friends, to Your Other Brothers Podcast. We are a community navigating faith, homosexuality, and masculinity together. From the Jewel of the Blue Ridge of Asheville, North Carolina, my name's Tom. I'm so glad you're here. Joining us today is a couple of dearly beloved, they're not married, dearly beloved brothers from the city of Oaks. It's our other brother, Ryan. What's up, Ryan?
Hey Tom, hey everyone.
You know, there's a new way to do this intro every time I found. There's no end. It just can be diverse. It doesn't have to be the same robotic intro every single time. So, Ryan from Raleigh, what's up, friend? And then joining us from the folksy tundra, our other brother, Aaron. What's up, Aaron?
Hey there.
Oh, hey there. It's good to have you. Good to have you both. You guys, this is a great episode because I love episodes that I guess every episode's organic in the sense that we have to decide what it is. We don't spin a wheel and it's not random chance when we decide our episode topics. But this one feels particularly organic, if I can use that word, because it sort of follows up from the last episode that you guys appeared on, which was gay representation in media. This was actually a topic that was explored, that was mentioned when we did a Zoom call a few months ago with our listeners, with our supporters. They gave us 15 or 20 suggestions. It was fantastic. Such a great brainstorming session, something we'll be doing again with our Patreon community. And someone mentioned something along the lines, they didn't put a title on it, but they mentioned something about what do we do with gay movies or gay TV shows that are explicitly LGBT themed, what do we do with that as Jesus followers, as people who believe in a traditional sexual ethic? Do we watch those? Do we steer clear from them? Do we make other people not watch them? Do we put up warning signs? What do we do? What do we do? Is there wisdom in watching or digesting various forms of LGBT plus media? So this was a topic that came from our listeners, and it kind of felt like a great follow-up from our last episode that we did together with you guys. And so whether it's a sequel, whether it's a spin-off, I'm not sure. It's some sort of follow-up from gay representation in media, where we focused on seeing gay characters show up in movies and shows and books and what have you. And today we're talking about explicitly LGBT plus media. So whether that's movies, shows. Aaron, you actually mentioned, I think it was on that podcast, you might have mentioned having those seasons where you go to the Netflix section and you scroll down, there's an LGBT section, and then you'll see however many films they have. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about
Netflix
today.
or Hulu or Amazon.
Yeah,
the list goes on. They've all got them these days.
Discovery Plus.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if Discovery Plus has an LGBT plus section, but we're talking about LGBT plus media today and what to do with that. The pros, the cons, the benefits, the distractions. We're gonna dive into that. We got some good feedback as always from our yobbers, so we'll be sharing that as well. Something though that I need to bring up, we like to reference current events. It's nice little time capsule moments for people who are listening live, but right now there's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot happening in Ukraine at this moment. And in preparing for this show, I was looking, because I swear I don't make things up in my head. Maybe sometimes I do, but I swear that over the years, because Yob has been around for 6+ years now, I swear in somewhere in that 6+ years, I know I got an email from somebody in Ukraine. I know I did. I know it. I can see it. Something from Kyiv. I can see that signature line. And I was looking in my email today. I could not find it. We've changed email servers a couple times in 6+ years. So I'm wondering if it got lost, if it was an original email that was sent years ago or what, or maybe I just didn't dig deep enough or something. But But in any case, I know we've gotten at least one download from Ukraine in 6+ years of this podcast, and certainly visiting our blog. So I don't know. I don't know if anyone's presently listening to this episode in Ukraine, or if we've had readers, listeners, if we have them presently. But yeah, it is crazy times. I was watching the other night, because as we're recording this podcast, Russia invaded Ukraine, I think 2 or 3 days ago. And I don't know about you guys, like, does that hit you in a way? Like, a lot of times when I read about wars and conflicts between countries, it feels like these are things that happened 60 years ago, 50. I mean, this is the first attack, another attack in Europe, like, since World War II. Like, it's been 80, 90 years since something like this has happened. And it always just feels like we've ascended past that. But then every time I feel like humanity has taken a definitive step forward, like, something will inevitably bring us back. And I just remember watching on the news, it was like 11 p.m. or midnight or something, and I was just like transfixed to the screen, really akin to, like, the only thing I can compare it to was when 9/11 happened, and this thing happened that, you know, was so dramatic and so like what is this? And it's weird to like hold it as an American where this is happening a world away, but with the wonders of technology and the internet, it's happening. It might as well be happening next door. Like, it just feels so much more real. I don't know. Do you guys have any just general thoughts or insights about the? I don't want to be dramatic and say this is World War III or anything, but like, it's crazy. It's crazy that another country invaded another country. Like, does that still happen in 2022? The year of our Lord? Like, it's crazy to think about.
Well, it's really the first. I mean, this is like the. I mean, wouldn't this be like the first time something like this is happening with like social media and like live on the ground updates from just anyone with a cell phone? And we're getting so much video footage of just things going down in the streets. I remember, seeing one, or reading a transcript from a video of a woman who was, just like getting Russian soldiers to put sunflower seeds in their pockets as a symbol of the Ukraine that they have invaded and wronged the Ukraine. So I mean, we're just seeing lots of little intimate details that most people in wars throughout history haven't really been privy to.
Yeah, it is kind of startling to see it actually happen, because I think there's been so much, obviously, that has happened in the last couple of years. On the one hand, it's not surprising to see now war become another thing we add to the list. But on the other hand, I think it's easy in the age of movies where we can see battles happen in much better picture quality than the phones of a real battle going on, to kind of feel desensitized a little bit to the real crazy that can happen in the world, and the actual death and destruction and displacement that happens in a real war, not just a fictional war on the screen. So it's depressing to see this is where the world still is, and that we haven't moved past it. And it's frightening to think about the fact that now, you know, there's a lot of nuclear powers in the world. Like, the world has changed in terms of technology and weapons since then. So, you know, but God is in control, as he always is. And, I think he's capable of working good out of evil, but that doesn't diminish the suffering that we're seeing go on.
Yeah, and we're only, a couple days in as of this recording. This episode will come out eventually, and then who knows? I don't even know, like, when this comes out, who knows what's happened since then. So we don't have that foresight yet. But beyond just Ukraine, obviously, if we have anyone in Ukraine, our prayers are with you. If you know anybody in Ukraine, our prayers are with you. But I think even just larger out, like, people, we certainly have lots of listeners and supporters throughout the rest of Europe and that region. I myself have family scattered about Poland, which is like right next door, which is so crazy. Like, I don't know. I need to get in touch with my mom and just see if she's connected with, because I still have aunts and cousins and uncles over there. So it's again, the world is way more interconnected than we used to be. I mean, Aaron, you yourself have people in Sweden, right? Which is not that far either. Sweden. It's like, I mean, yeah, it's an interconnected world. And so, I don't know, just keep praying, pray for Ukraine, pray for peace, pray for this crazy world, which just feels like, yeah, it feels like after getting through a pandemic, we've earned like 170 years of world peace, right? But this is a crazy world we live in. There's no easy way to shift gears from that. But I wanted to give a shout out to a dear listener, Adam, who called the Yob line, who gave us, this is going to be a lovely conversation because he called the Yob line after our I don't know if it was specifically after our gay representation in media episode or just in general in Yob lately. I don't know. We're just in that rhythm where we're just talking a lot about gay TV, gay movie stuff. Like our brother Will, he wrote a blog about a movie called Handsome Devil, and then our brother Eugene just came on a combo cast where we talked about Luca. And so Adam, somewhere in the midst of all of that happening, Adam decided to call the Yob line and had this question about a particular reality show with a certain drag queen and wanted our thoughts on it. Or I'll just, since I didn't prep Ryan or Aaron for this, I certainly have my own thoughts on this, but maybe they can chime in too. So let's play this voicemail from Adam and then talk about it.
Hey, this is Adam. I'm a longtime listener of the podcast, Plural, and I've really enjoyed hearing you guys dive more into representation in the media with films like Handsome Devil and movies like Luca, and that's been so great to listen to recently. And you guys are always really good at giving nuanced takes and hitting at topics from all sides, like you did on Queer Eye, you know, a big staple of LGBT media. And I would love to hear your perspectives on another staple of queer entertainment, RuPaul's Drag Race, you know, the huge TV franchise. I'd imagine it's a controversial topic amongst the side B community. I've actually wanted to talk about it with some of my side B friends, but just haven't been bold enough to bring it up. But I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on it. So thank you so much. Really love the show. And yeah, have a good one.
Thank you, Adam. I don't believe he's ever called before. I was like listening back to it a few times, like, do I recognize that voice? Is this someone in our community? I don't think I recognize the voice. So if that's true, first time caller, we love first time callers on the Yob line. And this is such a great fitting conversation because just for you, Adam, just for our listeners, he was asking about this show, which I've heard about for years and years and years. And I've never watched it. Like, I pride myself in being somewhat of a reality fan. Like, I love Survivor, love The Amazing Race. I've watched a few seasons of Big Brother. Like, there's a lot of reality shows that I just inherently am drawn to. But RuPaul's Drag Race, cannot say that has been one that I have been drawn to and have ever watched. And after he took the time to call the Yob line, I was like, you know what, you guys? For the people, I'm going to watch RuPaul's Drag Race. And last night, I watched the premiere of the first All-Star season. Because what I wanted to do was, like, I don't want to watch the first season of Drag Race because every show's first season is weird. Like, it's trying to figure out what it is. And I was like, I want to go to when it's well-established. And furthermore, it was an All-Star season. So it's like, these are the best of the best. This is the cream of the crop that they brought back for a second time. And so I watched the premiere, not knowing who any of these people were, not knowing any of their pasts or histories or stories or anything. And I have some thoughts. I have some thoughts, and I want to spend too much. This isn't the Drag Race podcast, so I don't want to like take 45 minutes to talk about it. But I was trying to figure out, like, why have I been resistant to it? Because within the first 5 minutes, it is like a sugar rush. Like, I pictured like the equivalent of like downing a giant pitcher of Kool-Aid and eating like gummy worms, and I was just like, it's just like colors on the screen and loud sound effects and music, and it's just like it's a lot. It's an aesthetic explosion. So there's a lot going on just aesthetically. With and
like
show.
Every 30 seconds you hear RuPaul's like laughter like floating through the background, like you're in some carnival haunted house. True.
Have you seen it? I didn't even ask if you guys have seen this show.
I've seen several episodes.
Okay.
Yeah, so have I, somewhere along the way. I kind of tried to go back to the beginning too, but realized that it must have started a long time ago because the audio and picture quality was really terrible on the first seasons.
You know, I need to apologize to you guys because I just assumed that you guys would have never dipped your toes in the RuPaul waters, but I judged you. I'm so sorry. sorry. I'm so sorry for assuming that, because this was my first time. But yeah, it was a lot. But once you like get used to it, once you get used to the water, I start watching it, and it's just like there's something unique about it. There ain't no show like that. Let's just say. I mean, you could compare it to maybe like America's Next Top Model or some other judging shows. I mean, even like American Idol, if like the concept of being judged in front of people, like there's that commonality, I guess. But it's very unique. And I was trying to figure out, like, yeah, why was it so off-putting? Because I've just always avoided it because I've never been drawn to drag culture and just like super flamboyant people. Like that's I've realized, you know, whether this is internalized homophobia or what, like I just have been I don't know, I've just been kind of turned off to that level of flamboyancy. And there was something though that was just very redeeming about watching the entire episode, not like checking out halfway through, like completing the episode, and feeling a little enriched, if I can use that word, just to like have a knowledge of a world that I previously didn't know existed. Like, I'm not saying I'm going to start binging the 50 seasons, because they've done so many of these seasons now. I'm not going to say I'm going to watch it. I might even just say I might watch the rest of this season, because there's only 6 episodes in it. So I was like, maybe I'm starting to get a little intrigued about what happens. So I'm not saying I'm going to watch the whole series, but to at least be made aware of like this world, the drag world, and to get this insight is something that I'm like grateful for. Can you relate to that a little bit in any way?
Yeah, I definitely can, because that was one of the big reasons I watched it initially, was just because I'm LGBTQ, but I don't understand drag. And that's not something I've ever been intrigued by or interested in. And so I was curious to see what does this look like in a show like this that's sort of presenting drag, and I think does give you a bit of a behind the scenes look to drag queens and drag stars. But I would agree. I mean, I can understand how it wouldn't be everybody's cup of tea, regardless of if you're homophobic or not. There are just going to be some people who don't enjoy that sort of crazy, boisterous show. But
Right.
I really like, he ends every episode saying, if you can't love yourself, how are you supposed to love somebody else? And I really like that. I think that's a strong message. And I also think it just humanizes people a little bit. So I think there's a lot of good qualities to it, whether or not you agree with what's going on stage. To me, it's more of an expression of art than it is exclusively LGBTQ, like making a statement about the gay agenda or something like that. So I don't find it off-putting, but I can see how people would.
Yeah, I would say like for like an elimination contest reality show, like it's got surprisingly positive energy where like there's a little bit of drama between the contestants, but from what I've seen, you know, when RuPaul dismisses a queen at the end of the episode, you know, she'll say something like, "You're amazing. And we're going on without you." Like, and "You're amazing," and go out and, you know, do something else. Like there's this sort of there's this sort of like constant affirmation, I guess, or not constant affirmation, because they certainly like level some pretty pretty stark critiques at the queens, but like there's this sense of like they're not going to like they're not going to attack and shame contestants for the same things the rest of the world is. Like they might critique. I feel like they critique contestants, but don't utilize like shame tactics, which is good. I mean, I think, you know, if you're talking about getting your like straight conservative friends to watch RuPaul's Drag Race, like I think it's kind of an uphill battle, and not just because it's drag. Like I think if I'm thinking of like my pastor friends at church, you know, like I'm not going to get them to sit down and watch like Survivor with me. Like it's just not something that, you know, just that genre of TV is just not something that I think a lot of people I know like have room in their lives for. And so, you know, even if I can sort of like defend it to them, like they're not, I'm not really going to sell it to them. I think what the show has going for it is like really impressive amounts of creativity and talent and just impressive improv. Like every act is really like an improv show, right?
That's true.
So like it showcases these people who are incredibly talented along several different dimensions to give this performance. And so I think you can sort of see the beauty in that and appreciate that.
Yeah, no, like I'm not like huge into makeup and costume and all that stuff, but then seeing the finished product and the photography that goes with it, like there was something like, again, if I'm looking for something to take away from it, that you put the nail on the head on something that I was trying to think about too, was just like the improv of it, and the energy, like everyone's just feeding off of each other, and it just feels like it's like I feel better for having watched it, dare I say. Like and so going back to the question, like it's so funny because I've thought about in the past, like, it'd be really good if my parents, if my mom in particular, but if my parents watched an episode of Queer Eye with me, like that would be so enriching, I feel like, just to give them a glimpse in this world. And then comparing that, like the idea of watching a Queer Eye episode versus a Drag Race episode, like Queer Eye might as well be the straightest, it might as well be like Terminator 2 or something compared to Drag Race. So I'm trying to think of like baby steps. What would be like something to introduce like redeeming LGBT culture in various mediums, but there's still something beautiful that they're creating that it can be redeemed. Like I think that is a beautiful concept that I don't know, that's something that we're going to dive into with this episode today. So thanks again, Adam, for that call. Loved it. It was just so fitting for this episode. Every once in a while voicemails might come in that don't connect with what we're going to talk about in that episode, because it might be referring to a previous episode, but it's always fun to like talk about previous topics, to revisit those for a few minutes too. So that was really great. Thanks for calling. And if anyone else has any Drag Race thoughts, please go to our podcast page and comment your Drag Race thoughts. No spoilers if I don't know who wins this season, if I'm going to go back and finish it or not. We'll see what happens. Some quick announcements. Book club rolls on. We're reading Gay and Catholic this month with Eve Tushnet, and then next month we're reading Deeper by Dane Ortland, which is a follow-up to a book that we read last year for book club, called Gentle and Lowly, which got a lot of great reviews around the world. So excited to read those here in the middle of Easter season. It'll be good to read those books. We would love to have you. There is, as we say at book club, there's always room for one more. We don't actually say that, but that's hopefully the vibe. There's always a vibe that one more, we could have one more person here, and we would love to have you. So if you're interested, go check out our Patreon, patreon.com/yourotherbros, and come to book club. It'll be the greatest 2 hours you spend each month, I promise. I sort of promise that, as much as I can. It's a good time. I love book club night. And before we get to our episode, sponsoring this episode, guys, what would you say is the queerest form of media out there? The queerest form, the queerest outlet, the queerest avenue.
Wow, like the queerest, like medium, like cassette tapes versus like.
We are not sponsored by cassette tapes today, sadly. This would be great though. We would be so fortunate if cassette tapes would sponsor our show. No, we thank the circus for sponsoring this episode. Not any particular brand of circus, mind you, but the circus. I'm reminded of oh my gosh, such a great movie, The Greatest Showman, and the soundtrack of that. Oh my gosh, think about that all the time. So again, we're not saying that we're sponsored by Barnum and Bailey. I think they went bankrupt, didn't they? I think they did. Or they stopped. They ceased existing or something.
It was beautiful music. I don't know what happened after that movie.
Yeah. We thank the circus for sponsoring this episode. As we talk about LGBT plus media today, I want to go back to Aaron, because Aaron, you hit on something, this whole like Netflix deep dive, and you can substitute Netflix with Hulu or Amazon or whatever the other ones are. Peacock, does Peacock have anything? I don't know. Maybe.
It feels like it should.
It probably does. But yeah, like I didn't even know this was a category until however many years ago. Like it became an established category. There are now gay films that are available for streaming. and you can watch one after the other. And I remember noticing that for the first time, whenever that was, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that. Like, and just being very intrigued. And I probably watched one or two or something, or maybe more, I forget. But something about it like called to me, whispered to me. And I don't know that it was necessarily all sinister. It was all like, I can't wait to be aroused by something. Like that might have been part of it, if I'm honest, but there was something deeper to it. And that's kind of what I wanted to explore as we kick off this subject. Like, for you, when you saw that, like what beckoned you, what called you to watch whatever you watched?
I watched all sorts of things. Probably some of the movies had different motives than others, but by and large, I think that it was particularly at a point where I was just starting to process my sexuality and just starting to really come out to a handful of people. And so I was really in a stage of exploring my sexuality a lot. And this felt like I never wanted to watch them before because it felt too gay to watch a gay movie or something like that, or it felt wrong. And it was sort of that that feeling of doing a bad thing watching this movie. It's kind of exciting. But what you find is that a lot of them are not as sexualized as everybody thinks they are. And of course, there's a lot of sexualized media out there, whether it's gay or straight. And I think there can be problems, to some extent. I was looking for kind of living vicariously, like a relationship or some sort of emotional connection through the characters in the film. But also I was just trying to figure out my sexuality. And that was a really helpful way for me to process it, which I think is true for everybody. A lot of people process things internally through media, whether that's a book or a movie or, all sorts of different things, podcasts and things like that. So for me, it was just another avenue that I could use to explore my sexuality without having to necessarily talk to one of the few people that I came out to that wasn't ready to really talk to me about my sexuality.
Yeah, no, that's really well said. I can relate with a lot of that, like sort of living vicariously, but then also just having, like, sometimes there's these the groanings of our heart, as is in scripture, right? Something about that. Not to say scripture says watch gay movies to
Right.
resonate with, but I felt like some sort of I need an outlet. I need something to just connect my humanity with another's, even though I might disagree with, like, if they're in a gay romance or having gay sex or whatever's happening on the screen or in the story, like, there's still something about me that wants to see someone like me that is very rare. And that's kind of what we talked about in our last episode with gay representation in media, or specifically trying to find like a side B or a traditional LGBT Christian representation out there. Like, I need something out there to connect with. And maybe this doesn't do it 100% of the way, but at least gets me somewhere. That I think I definitely see like just a valid human response. Like when we read books, when we watch movies, when we watch shows, we're looking for characters that are like us, right? Like we want to connect with parts of the story. I think that's a human natural function. I love this comment from one of our yobbers, because when I announced the topic and I put out some questions for them to answer for this episode, someone responded, "This is a topic that I've been thinking about and considering myself a lot recently. I appreciate you guys digging into it." So he already appreciates the fact that we're doing it. He hasn't even heard a word of this yet, but he appreciates it. And I'm hopeful that that's a snapshot of not only people within our community, but our listenership, whoever else is listening. If you're brand new, welcome. What a great first episode if you're listening for the first time. Hopefully we can touch on some things that is common across us, because everybody has Netflix now. Like, this used to be a thing. Remember when you had to order the thing in the mail and you would wait a week for the thing to come in the mail, and that's what Netflix used to be?
Yeah, or like, I mean, before even mail-in Netflix, did like Blockbuster even have an LGBT section?
Or if it did, would you go up to it and pick it out and go to the cashier and slam it down? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, like I think streaming services might have something to do with kind of the explosion of LGBT films in the past, like 10, 15 years. That's
a great point, because like there's no way I'd be going if Netflix wasn't existing. If there was video stores, if I could go to a video store down the road and there was an LGBT section, would I be inclined to go to it, to be seen there, to pick one up and to walk to a cashier? I don't think I would. And I'm out, I'm completely open with my story, but I don't think I would have that bravado to do that. And so the fact that you can watch it from the privacy of your home, that is interesting that you bring that up. Like, I didn't even think about that it's accessible to people who would have never otherwise consumed this. So one of the first questions that I put out to our community, I wanted to know that has there ever been a film, TV show, what have you, that you consumed something with gay characters, gay themes that you just regretted after you watched it? You were like, that was not helpful. It did not, I just did not enjoy that. That was not good for my spirit, my soul. And then just asking why did you regret it? What happened? And on the flip side of that, what drew you to it? Just like I asked Aaron, like what was kind of the reason that you watched it in the first place? I just wanted to read a few of our Yobber comments and then get y'all's thoughts on anything that they say, if it resonates, as we like to say here, or as I like to say here. Someone said this: I've seen a few works of queer cinema that are rather intense, and I can honestly say I don't regret it. They were essential to learning about queer history and culture, which is mainly what drew me in. Much of what I've seen has only reinforced my convictions and my chosen sexual ethic. I've only regretted watching when the movie simply was not a good movie, in my opinion. Some movies that aren't great still have some great parts, though. There's two sides of that I wanted to focus on, like the historical part. Like, have you guys watched anything where you just had a glimpse into gay history or gay culture that you didn't know before, that you're just grateful to have known from that?
One that stood out to me was Imitation Game, which is not explicitly an LGBT.
I still have not seen that. Yeah, with Benedict Cumberbatch. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent film. I mean, I'm a World War II nut, so I watch pretty much every World War II movie that I come across. And I was actually, I didn't know a whole lot about his personal story, so I didn't realize that he was gay. And so it was very interesting because they put a bit of that biographical sense in there too, where it's about World War II, but it's also sort of about this guy who was instrumental in winning World War II, who was so poorly treated by his own country because of his sexuality. And I guess I won't spoil the ending, even though it's his history and anybody could find it on Wikipedia. But it was a kind of an eye-opening moment, because World War II it's a while ago, but it doesn't feel that long ago. So it's depressing to think about how people were treated, in the 40s. And of course, we know how people were treated in the US in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. So hasn't been resolved by any means.
Yeah, Imitation Game. I loved that. I loved that opportunity to tell Alan Turing's story. As I'm a software developer, my entire field is built on like the discipline of computer science, which Alan Turing is like the grandfather, the founding father of computer science as we know it. And so I'm proud to have kind of that figure of gay history like in my field. I think with the Imitation Game, we have to kind of use some loose air quotes around history, because I'm not sure there's evidence that he had a romance with a with a woman at the place, but that was a good movie.
Yeah, and there's lots of other ones. I know I've never seen that. There's another one called Milk that talks about Harvey Milk that I haven't seen, that people have had a lot of good things about, to just give a glimpse into his life. And so there is that element too. Again, going back to Drag Race, like the base concept of just being made aware of something that you don't know much about. Like, there's a curiosity there that inherently isn't sinister, that isn't bad. Like, and so there is that element that I would say as part of this conversation. The other one that I found interesting in that comment was finding, and I'm curious how you guys relate with this statement, but like finding a greater conviction in what you believe after watching a story like that. Like, is that something that you could sign off on and agree with, or is that challenging? Like, have you watched a gay film and been like, I kind of really want that, and I don't feel more resolved? Because I think that's where a lot of the pushback would come from watching a gay movie or a gay show, would be like your convictions will be tested, or you'll feel more tempted, or you'll just, so I'm curious how that part hits you guys.
Yeah, so recently I watched a web series called The Gay and Wondrous Life of Caleb Gallo, and it is pretty short. It's like 5 episodes on YouTube, and none of them is longer than 20 minutes. And it's a comedy, and it's legit like really funny. And I don't think I regret watching it because it is very funny, but watching it and seeing how all of these characters, their lives, which surely reflects the lives of the writers, like all of their lives just revolve around who's hooking up with who, and like that's the extent of their life together, these characters, and they kind of define their relationships just in explicitly sexual terms. And and like I guess I watched that and I think, well, that's really funny, but I'm glad I'm not them. Like, I'm glad that I have a bigger view of life and my friendships and something bigger to live for than getting to have sex with the next person I want to have sex with.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And for me, I think when I was first starting to process all of this, I was maybe more prone to just getting emotionally involved with what I was watching and feeling really sad and lonely and wistful. Not all the time, but I think that was more common. And now, having matured a bit and come a ways, I feel similar to how I feel about a lot of romantic comedies or just romance movies, where they don't show you what happens a year after the movie ends. Like, I love Simon, but it ends with this beautiful culmination of them finally being together, and you don't get to see in 6 months, like, oh, it didn't work out. They went to college and they grew distant, and now they're on to the next person. So that's maybe my biggest critique is, if you fast forward a lot of these situations, you realize it's not quite as glamorous as it looks initially. And anybody who's married will tell you the same thing. It's difficult. It has a lot of challenges. And reading some blogs and some personal stories of people who aren't Christian necessarily, who, lived sort of, sexually free, I'll put it that way. They have a lot of baggage from doing that for their whole life, and medical issues as well. And I think that's something that's not exclusive to gay people, but certainly if you do the research, you can find that it's not quite all it's cracked up to be for a variety of reasons.
Well, and I think that points to something that I'm realizing as we're talking, which is that, like, the problems with consuming LGBT romance are really just problems with consuming romance genre.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah. And think about, we just happen to connect to the gay dramas or the gay romance because that better embodies our personal experience.
Yeah. So, I mean, personally, I've found that, like, consuming LGBT romance isn't, like, doesn't make me happier, doesn't make me more joyful, doesn't make me more resilient. Doesn't make me more contented with life. And so I'm just not going to do it. And I think it's all because, like, it's this kind of fake world that I can't have, that doesn't exist. But when I'm immersed in it, it feels like I could have it, but it's out of my reach. And like, that's just not like building me up.
Yeah. Very interesting. I wanted to comment, though, on something you said, Aaron, because I don't know if you've watched Love, Victor, but there is...
I have, and they do have them in there.
You said we don't know what happens 6 months from now, but we kind of do. We kind of do know, not to spoil anything. We do now. But
you're right. You're right.
But no, I see what you're saying, because then what happens when Love, Victor ends? Then what? We got to keep... There's always more of the story that we don't know, that we're not told.
Well, and they don't show you the fights and the arguments.
Yeah,
and
no,
stuff
all the in-between stuff. Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely true. Something that resonated with me, like, I'm going to be very careful. Like, we might reference a couple titles of things, along the way, and you guys use your judgment if you feel like you can't listen to this episode because we're referencing too many things and you just don't want ideas in your head. I mean, at this point, you probably aren't even listening anyway. So, but I want to do my diligent duty and, like, say, because there's a movie out there that I really enjoyed. with at least one or two gay scenes, nothing overtly sexual, but somewhat, yes. But they're beyond that, beyond the sexual scenes. Like there's a line that was said that really stuck with me when I saw it, and has stuck with me when Ryan was started talking about it, about identity or gay romance or romance in general. Because there's a straight character that asks the gay character, as he's an adult now, doesn't it get better? Isn't that what you guys say? Doesn't it get better? It gets better, right? And the gay character just looks at him and shakes his head and is like, no, sometimes it doesn't. It's complicated. Dating is hard. Finding relationships are hard. And there is an honesty there that I'm not saying that all gay media like pretends that, that everything's easy, but sometimes when you look, sometimes there's like a kernel of honesty that is just so like, man, that just really resonated with my soul. It's like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, like finding relationship in general, whether you're dating or just becoming friends with somebody, like you don't all of a sudden have it all figured out. Like it doesn't necessarily get better in that sense. Like it's still work. It's still hard to find that.
Yeah, that kernel of honesty, that is something that I think can make like a romance story worth experiencing, worth consuming. Like if there's something to it besides just the romance, the superficial lovey-dovey romance. I watched Brokeback Mountain, and I came away thinking that was an incredibly beautiful movie that happened to have a gay romance at the heart of it. Like just even just the scenery was incredible, and the music. And it was really, I feel like the movie wasn't even about the romance exactly. It was about two gay men who couldn't figure out how to fit their sexuality, reconcile their sexuality with the rest of their lives, and the pain that caused. And so I think that, as I think about what makes like a piece of LGBT media, like what makes it something that I am glad I consumed or am glad I didn't consume, I think it has to do with, is there something like true or beautiful or necessary kind of at the heart of it that helps me be more in touch with the reality of the world.
Yeah. And when it's done well, it could hit you so to the core. I mean, just because of the nature of our sexualities being in common, like that can be such a resonating thing. Again, like I won't name some of them, but there have been some gay films that I've watched that I'm like, yeah, maybe I don't agree with the pursuit of a same-sex partner, but there's something about the humanity of it that is gripping and that is appealing, that lands with me deeper than other places. And for some people listening, may not be in a place. Like I couldn't have watched these movies, I don't think, when I was a teenager. I don't think that would have been helpful to me or would have caused more problems. Maybe not, I don't know. But I just know now in my 30s, certainly in my mid to late 20s, like it was something that was helpful just to, again, to start to work out all these issues that I feel. Like, do I feel romance for my straight friend, or do I feel, or why is this relationship so hard? Or talking to my parents, like why is that so difficult? Like just finding commonalities with other people. Going back to Love, Simon, to like have a kid who goes to the internet for help and just posts something online and finds somebody to connect with online, which I know is a very common story with your other brothers and people who find us this way, or send an email to me or to Ryan or Aaron or to one of our other authors for the first time. Like I know that's a thing that you have something in common to share with someone that you watch on a screen. So yeah, that's one element of it. I wanted to read this other comment as well, which I can relate with, certainly. He said, I grew up pretty sheltered and carried a lot of internalized homophobia into my young adulthood. As a result, I'd steered clear of a lot of LGBTQ media for a while. That being said, I feel like it's been really important for me to expose myself to some LGBT media. It's helped rip away some assumptions I've had, remove some shame, and come to see LGBTQ people as people in a way that was healing for me. However, this has led to some unhealthy places occasionally. Music videos are usually where I felt I go too far. Instead of informing myself, I end up disturbing myself. I think it's true across the board, though, that some artists just cross lines. My regrets in those instances aren't enough, however, to cancel out the internal freedom that I've gained. Yeah, and he made a point in there too about like anyone, gay or straight, might take something too far. So like to make that exclusively a gay thing, like only gay media goes too far, or is too sexual, or is too like, I mean, my goodness. I'll be honest, I've seen more gratuitous sexual scenes between like a heterosexual couple in movies than I have, I think, honestly, with gay couples in these movies that I've watched over the years, or shows. I think that's a pretty true statement that it's just like, why are the straight people having so much crazy sex or showing so much in these movies that are rated R, even rated PG-13 in some cases? Like, I don't know. I think there's room to share the load of someone going too far, so to speak. I don't know where exactly this scene fits in, but I wanted to mention it now because we've talked about Boy Erased a few times on the podcast. We did a blog about it with lots of our authors, so we'll link that post. So beyond the conversion therapy part, which is not part of my story, but it's part of Will's story, it's part of lots of our listeners' stories. There was a scene in that movie that I remember like at least one or two of our guys commenting on it when it was brought up years ago. Because there's a scene where the main character like runs out of the building, or he's like running through the streets at night, and like he comes to like a bus stop, I think, and there's like a poster of like a hot young male model or something like on the bus like stop backdrop or whatever, and he just like screams, or he like punches it or something. I forget, it's been a few years since I've seen it, but I just remember that snapshot of being a moment like, how often has that been us, where we're like going about our day, maybe things are going great, maybe things are going awful, and then we just see like the epitome of like the thing that we're trying to resist, or like whether it's someone that's hot or attractive or whatever, otherwise distracting or tempting or whatever. And I just remember that being like such a resonant moment of like, yeah, been there, bro. Which I appreciated.
On a similar note, I also wanted to shout out the film Moonlight. A listener reached out to me and reminded me about that film, which I regret forgetting about last time, talking about representation. And it's a really excellent film that, you know,
did that win Best Picture? That won Best Picture, didn't it?
I think it did, or at least it was nominated. I don't know if it won.
I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering correctly, it was one of the, like, there was a snafu one year where one picture got Best Picture, but then they made a mistake and it was actually Moonlight. I'm pretty sure.
That sounds a little familiar.
I will erase this from the podcast if that's not true. But if you hear it, if you're listening to it now and it was just said, then it's true. I double checked during editing and it's happened. It's true. But yeah,
and there's so much of the representation in that film doesn't really reflect my story, right? Because it's about black people in you know, urban settings, and yet there's a lot of representation that does speak to me, like in the end. Well, I don't want to spoil it, but anyone who watches it will recognize like a little bit of a side B representation to it, in a certain sense. Yeah. And so that's another, you know, I think as a, you know, upper middle class white guy, I learned a lot about the like Black queer experience from watching Moonlight. And so I think that that's another dimension along which we can sort of see good coming from consuming LGBT media, is that it does kind of open our eyes, especially as like white men, opens our eyes to, or can open our eyes to the experience of queer people who are in different demographics.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up Moonlight, and because I've never seen it. It's been on my list forever, just to see it, because I felt very convicted a couple years ago when I took a course. A lot of churches do it. There's a book called Be the Bridge by Latasha Morrison, and it talks about building bridges between white culture, Black culture, particularly within the church. But like, why are Sundays so segregated? Like, why do we go to our different camps, and like what's happening there? And it was a really great experience for me. I had lots of convictions and lots of takeaways from going through that course with my church. But among them was like, how much Black media do I consume? Like, when do I just sit down to watch something because Black people are in it and Black stories are being told? And Why am I inherently not wired to care? Like, why am I naturally, if I'm just being completely honest, why am I naturally drawn to watch white people, to watch white movies? Like, why is that in me? Like, what is going on there? And just again, it all goes back to Drag Race, you guys. Everything goes back to Drag Race. This is a world that I do not know. I am not Black. I am not a racial minority. And this is something that I need to see those stories told. I need to talk to people in my life too. I need to have people in my life to talk to as well. But to watch a movie, to watch a well-told story, or to read a book about these types of experiences, I think is such a vital thing, especially as believers too. If we're called to love people, empathize, and be there, like it's just such a vital thing. So I'm glad you brought up the racial part of it too, to go along with the sexual identity piece as well. I asked our yobbers about what resonates, like why, what are some things that you've felt that have caused you to connect with LGBT plus media. Or conversely, I also asked, do you have any regrets, or do you have both? And are you able to hold both of those things in tension? As far as like, was something helpful to watch? Was it not helpful? Or did it connect with some part of your spirit? Someone was really honest and he said this: I always feel a sense of belonging and resonance that's irreplaceable. So for him, he's quite enjoyed all of these films that he's taken part in, or that he's watched. Another one said, I've resonated with so many characters' feelings and lines, more than I can count. Feelings of loneliness, lament, and joy, watching a scene play out identically to my own experience. Like, yeah, that's another part that I can relate with too. The Love, Simon thing, it was so eerily similar. Like, I was just like, I can't believe there's a story happening that played out like so much of my life, not in the sense that I found a boyfriend or anything, but I found a bunch of boyfriends, right? I found a community. Who needs one boyfriend when you can have 500, you know?
See, that's what I'm saying.
That's healthy. That's real healthy.
I mean, that's when Your Other Brother's the movie, when that comes out, then that story will be way more accurate.
That'll be the tagline. Why have one boyfriend
when you can have 500?
At least. I mean, that's a starting point. You can have way more if you want. Yeah.
And so my boyfriends.
The new benediction is coming soon. We always tweak things along the way, you know. So my boyfriends. Here's what someone else said, which I love these thoughts. I've resonated with some characters, but more than that, I often find I resonate with music that names my experience well, secular and occasionally the Christian song. Music already takes us to deep places in worship, memory, or storytelling. So it makes sense that when it touches deeply felt parts of my sexuality that I kept hidden away in my homophobia, that it brings strong emotions and often helps me process things in a way words on a page or even conversations can't. He wrote more, but I wanted to stop there because I just thought that was so rich and so deep. Like, I don't know, have you guys, to go to a worship song, like, have you guys ever heard a worship song or sung a worship song and you've been able to connect some specific lyric to your sexuality, or seen like a song, like going back to Boy Erased? I remember just like the soundtrack of that movie so vividly. Troye Sivan did a bunch of the music. I don't know if it was all him or he certainly did the main song for Boy Erased, but I was just like, there's no way this would be as effective if it wasn't written by a gay person, if a gay person wasn't singing the lyrics to the song that's happening. Like, it gave that the gravitas and the just the emotional resonance that is one of my favorite parts of that movie. His comment went on to talk about comedians, which I thought was kind of interesting. Another thing that surprised me, I found deeply healing, was LGBTQ comedians, or tasteful jokes about our experience. It occurred to me growing up that most of the humor or the comedians I heard were straight people relating to straight experiences. I could still laugh and find it funny, but it didn't relate to my experiences. And that's a surprising form of media I've found healing. Yeah, I didn't even think, it's so great when we put out comments to the community, because like, those are two things that were not in my mind. When I'm thinking about LGBT plus media, I'm not thinking about music, or I'm not thinking about comedians or stand-up acts, but that's media. And I love that people thought about that when this question and the prompts were put out. So I appreciate that comment so much.
Yes, one of my favorite like stand-up specials on Netflix is Nanette from Hannah Gadsby. She is a lesbian Australian, or perhaps an Australian lesbian. And And she opens with some like tasteful humor, like the commenter said, and just like very relatable humor about the queer experience, about coming out to people, about looking at pride and wondering like, oh, where's the parade for the quiet ones, and she kind of goes on to break down, like it almost turns a little meta, and she talks about her comedic process, like in the midst of this comedy set, like talks through her comedic process and the problems with just making her humor self-deprecating all the time, and it's a really insightful but also funny but also touching performance.
Wow. Check it out. I think the term is Australesbian. I think that's what you were looking for. Just to put that up. Shout out to any Australesbians listening. We know we love you. We love our other sisters. Yeah, no, I love that. And I'm sure there's plenty of other things that we're leaving out too when we think about media. Like it's such a diverse spectrum now. Even like gay films, like there's gay short films, or there's gay short stories, or there's even like, what do you guys think? I didn't even think about putting this into the prompt, but like to some extent, Your Other Brothers, like we're like, are we LGBT media? Like we're telling gay stories on our blog and we dabble those into the podcast. Like and to be fair, like we have been criticized over the years that we go too far and we talk too much about sexuality or sexual identity or shared nudity or whatever the things we talk about. Erections, what have you. I mean, there's sometimes where people be like, that's not helpful to me, and there's a criticism launched at Yob, or even if we wanted to expand the net, like to organizations like Revoice or people who quote unquote make sexual identity too much. Like, I don't know, any thoughts come to mind when you think about even something with a Christian focus? Do you guys support Yob?
You've got me wondering, Tom. I'm just kidding.
I don't mean to plant seeds of doubt, but this is what the people are saying out there, some of them.
Well, I think it's interesting, if I can just point out as an aside, like how we look at the phrase LGBT plus media and immediately we think of like the gay romance section of Netflix, when there's like so much more out there to talk about and enjoy and appreciate.
Yeah, and not every LGBT media has a gay scene, has a gay kiss, has nakedness, has like I've watched a few things where none of that happens. And so what is LGBT media at the core of it, you know? That's a very interesting point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, I think it's so true. I mean, it all comes down to being mindful about what you're consuming and about what impact what you're consuming has on your faith and your spiritual journey and your ability to love the Lord and be obedient to him. And if what you're consuming is hindering those things, then you might want to take a look at whether or not you should be consuming that, and you probably shouldn't be. But for many people, it's not that black and white. There's a lot of good and bad that's happening in any given film or movie or song that's all coming at you at once. And there's different seasons where that trigger, that sexual trigger or that emotional trigger might be just too much. Even if there's good there, you can't consume the good because there's going to be some bad issues along with it. And there's going to be a lot of seasons where people are healthier or need something that some media is going to say that make it perfectly okay to consume some of that, because there's a lot of straight sexual media out there where there's boobs all over the place, but that doesn't do anything for me. So me watching that,
Aaron, you can't say boobs.
Oh, sorry, I'm gonna say it. Yeah. No, so I think it's one of those things where it's just like you have to figure out for yourself what's going to be healthy. But yeah, I think in terms of Yob, a lot of what we're trying to do is we're just trying to share people's stories so that people can understand that they're not alone, and so that people understand this is something that people are going through. I don't think any of us would say we're the theological powerhouse of the Christian world trying to shape theological
How dare
discourse.
you?
I know. On
We are
everything
a
going on.
theological powerhouse.
Well,
we have two
want it to
pastors
be-
on the podcast.
That's fair. That's fair. We want it to be gospel centered and we want it to be Christ centered, but we also are comfortable, I think, living in the tension of this is where I was and I don't know what to do with that. And I think that's important for our audience to have a place they can go to that is
Absolutely.
talking about that.
Yeah, along the lines of discernment, because that was my last prompt for the Yobbers, was just like, how do you discern? What's the process for deciding what to watch, what not to watch, what to consume, what not to consume? One person said, sometimes you just got to learn in the field of hard knocks. Is that a field? Is that a place you go? The field of hard knocks. I steer away from that artist, or I avoid listening to this song when I'm sad, or only watch this actor when I have friends' presence, learning from experiences gone wrong. And I think that's just like showing yourself grace. Like, yeah, sometimes you might watch something gay themed or straight themed for that matter that wasn't helpful, that wasn't beneficial to your soul. And like acknowledge it and make it as self-awareness. Don't beat yourself up about it, but just be like, okay, now whenever something else like that pops up in the future, just to have that level of awareness of like, this is not going to be helpful for me. Like just to chart that away, I think is a very simple, I say simple, but it's just like, that's a very tangible thing that we can do, that we can learn from.
Yeah. For me, I think, there's porn out there and I try not to watch it, but there's also like emotional porn out there that's just it's not real, and like people watch it for this gratification, not to actually like, I don't think it's actually gonna improve anyone's life watching it. And I think when I see a trailer for a film, or when I see marketing for something, I can I feel like I can get a vibe to where like, that's emotional porn, and that's not going to be like, it's not going to make me happier.
Emotional porn. Yeah. I love that. Not that I love emotional porn, but I love that phrase because that's real. I can completely connect with what you're talking about. And the talk about a trailer, someone else mentioned trailers. Someone said, in one case, I watched the trailer and read the plot of a movie and quickly realized it would have a harmful effect. And so, yeah, I think trailers for movies, you can watch a trailer, and usually a trailer will be for all viewing audiences, right? And so you can at least get a base level taste of what the movie's going to be or the vibe of it. And so I think that can be a long way as far as going to films or shows go. Along the lines of emotional porn, though, I think I kind of wanted to read this comment, which goes into that concept a little bit. Someone said, it's not so much that I worry about being triggered by gay sex scenes, even if I do believe they're unhealthy for me to watch. What I'm even more triggered by is a sense of longing for what I don't have. When I see a film with two men in an intimate, loving relationship with each other, or when I see a gay man who's able to live fully as his authentic self, it makes me long for those things in my own life as a chaste, closeted gay man. It can be really hard to watch on-screen characters living the life I wish I had. But because I also believe authenticity and male intimacy are good things, I will sometimes take the risk to watch an LGBTQ media piece anyway, especially if it's been recommended by someone I trust. When I've felt safe to set aside my fears and watch these shows, I've come to realize it can be a way to celebrate my sexuality, even from the closet. And I just appreciated such honesty there from that person, because we have people listening who are in all sides of the spectrum, inside the closet, outside the closet, married, single. And there are some things that are going to be extremely beneficial or uplifting for one person that would have a completely devastating effect on someone else. And so there's no yes to all of these, or, discernment is good. I love the piece that he put too about a trusted friend, like recommending something to him. Like, I think that's a huge piece too. Like if you develop relationships with other people, particularly other side B, other gay identifying folks, within our community or otherwise, like I think that can be a huge piece too, to be like, hey, would it be beneficial for me to watch this? And then someone said yes, or someone said no. I think that's a great piece too, to have word of mouth and to have a little bit of accountability there.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I connect with God, and I think probably a lot of people do, when I feel deeply. So there's a lot of secular media out there that's not Christian that has really benefited my faith, because it's made me feel something that has allowed God an opportunity to come in. And sometimes those things are negative emotions, like it's sadness or loneliness or feeling a lack of something. And that kind of causes me to reflect and think, okay, why do I feel this? And what is it that God has to say to me in this? And sometimes it's other uplifting things that can be really helpful. But again, I think it's so much more about how God is speaking through what we're consuming and how what we're consuming impacts your faith than it is about what you're consuming. Not that there aren't, porn is bad. There's a lot of inherently problematic things, but there's a lot that I don't think is positive or negative. It's more neutral, and it depends on the individual.
Wow, y'all, like this is the topic that keeps giving. Like LGBT media, we talked about representation, we talked about discernment and discretion today. I mean, I feel like we could talk even more about like intersectionality. We mentioned race a few times. I mean, there's even like more sort of focus we could give on like within the sexual minority umbrella of LGBT, like talking about bisexual representation or trans representation. And I mean, I think we could probably do a whole episode about Drag Race, right? So
absolutely. It all comes back to Drag Race, which kicked off this whole conversation. Yeah, no, honestly, there's so much. And that's why it's important, right? That's why media, that's why stories are so important. That's why YOB exists. Like we see the value in story and having our story told and represented in written form and audio form. Maybe in visual form one day with films or something. But like, I just love, I love the story medium. I mean, I've been drawn to story since I was a little kid, and I think all of us are and just in our shared humanity, we're all drawn to story. And so it's important. It's important to tell our story as sort of like a cathartic release for us. But like what I've found over the years, it's like, it's kind of less for me and more for like all of a sudden there's people consuming my story that I didn't even know existed and will probably never meet this side of paradise, but like maybe. I mean, I've met Ryan, I've met Aaron, and I've met 498 of my other brothers. But yeah, it's so great, and there's so many layers to why story matters. And so hopefully we'll get to keep exploring those. I don't know if we'll keep doing them in succession. I don't know if Ryan and Aaron kind of want to switch it up and talk about something else next time, but maybe we'll keep the media train rolling. Who knows? We'll see. We'll talk about next time. I'm curious to hear how this episode landed with you. Again, we kind of hit LGBT plus media from lots of different angles. Ryan just listed a few of them. So if you want to talk about any of those things that we talked about, or if you have another angle that you want to explore, go to our podcast episode page, yourtherbrothers.com/podcast. Go to the episode 93 post on LGBT plus media and tell us a story, because that's what we're here for. We want to hear your stories. So we would love to continue the conversation in the comments. We've gotten a few comments lately. Comments have tapered a little in recent times, but last couple episodes, we got some comments. So if you guys want to check out those comments, those stories, go check out our blog. And thank you, The Circus, for encircling this episode. You know what a huge regret of my life is, you guys? I never went to the circus. Not once.
You never went to a circus?
Not once.
You did miss out.
I've lost my chance, right? Like it's gone. There's no more circus.
Yeah, no such thing anymore. There's Congress.
Ryan. You're so funny. That's probably the closest thing we're gonna get, though. Yeah, going to an open session of Congress. We love America. I can always just keep rewatching Greatest Showman. There's always that, right? That's not going anywhere. I
mean, I feel like the real circus surely would never live up to The Greatest Showman, right? Like,
no, it would probably just be really,
disappointed.
Yeah, right. It would be really dark and smelly, and I don't know. It's probably more illustrious on screen.
I would think so. And I mean, the whole point of the circus was to show people unique things they'd never seen before, and now we have CGI, so we just make whatever we want.
Now we have YouTube, and yeah, you can just the world's your oyster, but. Maybe our listeners, have you guys been to the circus? Let us know. Let us know in the comments when you're telling us about this episode, if you've been to the circus or not. And if you've seen Drag Race, don't forget that too. Ryan, Aaron, thank you for going down this sequel trail with us, this spin-off circle, whatever this episode was in relation to the last episode. Just great to hang out with you guys. Maybe we'll consume some form of gay media together one time. I meant to say this, Ryan. I've never seen Brokeback Mountain. That is one movie I've never seen.
We'll have to do a double header of Brokeback Mountain and Moonlight next time.
There we go. Sounds like a plan. Maybe we'll sprinkle in a episode of Drag Race to lighten the mood a little bit, give some levity.
That would be good.
Yeah, we would definitely need that.
And that's me, the sad boy, talking. So yeah, sandwich in some Drag Race in the middle, and we'll be set. All right. Well, love you guys. Thanks for doing this with me. Thank you for everyone listening. For all your other brothers, my name's Tom.
This is Ryan.
And I'm Aaron.
Reminding you that you are not alone. Even the sparrow finds a home. See you next time, everybody.
Bye, all of Tom's boyfriends.
Thanks for listening to Your Other Brothers podcast. Our show is edited and produced by Thomas Mark Zuniga. If you enjoy our show, consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Your Other Bros. We'd love to hear your story. Comment on this or any of our episodes at yourotherbrothers.com/podcast, or share a story to play back on our show by calling us at 706-389-8009. You can also email us at podcast@yourotherbrothers.com. or write to us at Your Other Brothers, P.O. Box 843, Asheville, North Carolina 28802. Finally, if you'd like to further support our storytelling, community building efforts, consider becoming a Yobber. Yobbers pledge monthly on Patreon and receive perks like bonus podcast content, access to a secret Facebook group, regular group calls with fellow patrons and authors, and more. Visit patreon.com/yourotherbros for more information. Until we journey next time, we're glad you're with us.